So good day everyone, my name is Maria Elizabeth A. Salboro and I'm going to discuss institutional correction. Lesson 2, the history, philosophy, and objective. Sing Sing Prison, Uburn System, Pennsylvania System, 5 Development of Prisoners, Form of Punishment, Age of Enlightenment, Personalities behind Correctional Institution, Caesar, Marquis of Baccaria Benicia, Cesar Lombroso, William the Conqueror, Eric Ferry, and Clifford Shaw. Discussion: Sing Sing Prison, Alcohol, Substances Abuse Treatment Program, Anger Management, Educational Program, Family Development Program, Guidance Counseling Services, Library and Law Library Services, Recreational Program, Religious Services, Sex Offender Treatment Program, Temporary Release Program, Trauma Program, Transitional Services Program, Veteran Services, Volunteer Services and Program. So let's go to the Sing Sing Prison. Sing Sing in full Sing Sing Correctional Facility, Maximum Security Prison located in Ossining, New York. In use since 1826, it is one of the oldest penal institution in the United States. So this is the third oldest prison in the world. It is also among most well known in the country, especially notable for harsh conditions in the 19th and 20th centuries. So Sing Sing Prison, originally known as the Mount Pleasant Prison, it was constructed in the village of Sing Sing on the east bank of Houston River. It was designed to prevent additionally prison space and to replace New Gate Prison. Construction was undertaken in 1825 by convict laborers under the supervision of Alma Lins and warden of the Uburn State Prison. He officially became head of the new prison when it opened in 1826, though it was not completed until 1828. The initial facilities had 800 cells. The prison population rose in the mid-19th century, resulting in more construction. The 4-story complex was soon 6-story, and the prison eventually housed more than 1,600 inmates. Because most of the early convicted crimes travel by boat to Sing Sing Prison, the traces up to the river came to Maine going to prison. One of the notable visitors to the prison was Alexis de Tocqueville, author of Democracy in America. The French government sent him and Gustave de Beaumont to the United States in 1831 to gather information about the American penal system. The two men were amazed at the total subjugation under which prisoners work at the administrative power the warden wielded at Sing Sing. So who is Alexis de Tocqueville? Born on July 28, 1805, Paris, France. Died April 16, 1859. Political science historian and politician, best known for Democracy in America. A perspective analysis of the political and social system of the United States in the early 19th century. Lins resigned as warden of Sing Sing in 1830 and returned to Uburn in 1838. He was asked to leave that prison a year later after the death of a prisoner who was punished severely for feigning illness. Despite this record, Sing Sing rehated Lins in 1843. Whippings and floggings were commonplace punishment at Sing Sing Prison, a cruel whipping contraption those lashes were often tripped with metals or bars. In addition, while Linz was warden and inmates were expected to refrain from making noise, which includes talking. With the advantage of the electric chair in 1891, Sing Sing becomes notorious for its execution, although the electric chair was developed at neighboring Newborn. Almost all execution within the states were carried out at Sing Sing until 1963. The famous death chair was later moved to Green Haven Prison. So, in additional, Sing Sing Prison was also site of infamous dead house where 614 execution, including 8 women's by electrocution, took place between 1891 and 1963. So, Sing Sing Prison was also the site of reform that affects the national penal system. Reform Thomas Mott of Salboro was developed his penology theories while voluntarily incarcerated for a years at Newborn. Served as Sing Sing warden in 1914 to 15 and 1916, but his intimate sweeping changes were isolated and he resigned under instant political pressure. More reforms were instituted under Lewis David Laws, who served as warden from 1920 to 1941. He notably improved the living conditions within the prison and allowed inmates to participate in sports. So, if you think Sing Sing Prison is a rough facility, so the Sing Sing Prison currently houses around 1,300 inmates and has notorious been one of the most roughest or ruthless prisoners among others. In 1901, the residents of Sing Sing village changed its names to Ozening. They wanted to distance it, not dissociated the town from notorious prison. From the same reason, in 1970, the states renamed the prison Ozening Correctional Facilities. So, Sing Sing Prison was changed to Ozening Facilities. So, why is prison called Sing Sing? So, Sing Sing names came from Indian phrases sin, sink, it means stone or stone. In 1901, 3 years after Edison introduced the electric chair at Sing Sing, the town changed its names to Ozening so people could confuse it with the jail. So, for others, they don't want their village called Sing Sing. I mean, the village called Sing Sing, but they don't want the jail called Sing Sing. So they changed the Sing Sing to Ozening prison facilities. Where did the term Sing Sing came from? Sing Sing took in its first inmates in 1828 when 150 convicts were shipped down the Houston River by barge from upstate Newborn Prison. The name Sing Sing came from Indian contribute name Sing or Sink, meaning stone upon stone. The site was chosen because of the village large marble quarry. So let's go to the Newborn State Prison. So Newborn State Prison is the second oldest prison in America. So prison located in Newborn, New York, opened in 1816. It established a disciplinary and administrative system based on silence, corporal punishment, and congregate labor. In architecture and routine, Auburn became the model of the prison throughout the United States. In the 19th century, many Americans believed that industrialization and dramatic demographic, economic, and political upheaval has conspired against the traditional controls of family, church, and community. So this pattern of small inside cell block was late uploaded by the most state prison in the United States. Whereas the Pennsylvania system, inmates did handcraft work in their cell. Auburn prisoners labored in congregate workshop, offsetting imprisonment caused by fulfilling private industrial contract. A hidden passageway with small openings surrounded the work area, allowing inspectors and visitors to surreptitiously monitor inmates. So, Pennsylvania system did handcraft work in their cell so that they can sell it to the workshop. Minors offenders labor in workshop during the day and retired to separate cells at night. Serious offenders alternate their days between solidarity confinement and congregate work. The most hardened criminals were placed in the solidarity confinement without work. After numerous suicide, intense of the mental illness, and attempt escape, the government of New York terminated the classification system and the experience in solidarity confinement. All male inmates work in congregate shop by day, returning to individual cell at night. Females first committed to newborn in 1825 were regulated to the attack and exclusive from regular work and exercise. So parang pupunta sila sa shop for to sell their handcraft, and they will return at night to their individual cell. To ensure that inmates did not corrupt one another, Britain successor Elma Lynch enforced a quasi-military routine of absolute silence, strict discipline, and economic productivity. In response to Bell's head shaved in inmates dressed in strict clothing silently march in locksteps formation to and from their cells for meals and work assigned. So flogging and another forms of corporal punishment enforced the rules. Such regulation was through necessary to restrain the rebellious nature of offenders. Eventually, overcrowding made the silent system unenforceable, and Auburn system of disciplinary deteriorated into corrupt and lax routines of rush punishment. After the Civil War, the spirit of reform within red and construct labors was no longer profitable, despite of the idea system. Auburn remained the model of nearly a century, primarily because it was been expensive to construct and maintain. Unlike Auburn and Sing Sing Prison, Pennsylvania Eastern Penitentiary 1829 was indeed to keep convict separated even as they worked in order to prevent any earthly commendation or distraction that might impede their presence, hence the term penitentiary. Located on Cherry Hill on outskirts of Pennsylvania, Eastern represented one of the most imposed and expensive architecture achievement in the United States to date, and it was contained innovations such as running water and floss toilets in all the cell. So, Pennsylvania correctional system was an early prison system requiring inmates sentenced individual cells and inmate labor in those cells. So, Pennsylvania system penal method based on the principle that solitary confinement foster penitence and can encourage reformation. The idea was evocational by the Philadelphia Society for Alleviating the Miseries of Public Prisons, who most active member of Quakers. In 1829, the Eastern State Penitentiary on Cherry Hill in Philadelphia applied the so-called separate philosophy. Prisoners were kept in solidarity confinement in cells 16 feet high, nearly 12 feet long, and 7.5 feet wide, 4.9 by 3.7 by 3.3 meters. Prisoners saw no one except institutions officer and an occasional visitor. Solidarity penitence, however, was soon modified to include the reform of work such as shoemaking or weaving. So the Pennsylvania system spread until it predominated in Europe. Prison critics in the United States argue that it was too costly and had deleterious effect on the mind of the prisoners. The Pennsylvania system was surpassed in the United States by the EU-born system. So let's go to the different types of criminal punishment. So deterrence. The goal of deterrence is to pursue citizens and possible offenders or reoffenders to confirm the rules of law. Mattei and Lu explain the fourth type of deterrence and generally recognized. So the first is specific deterrence, analyze how effective punishment is on an individual's future behavior. So parang you have to realize how hard can it be if you are in a punishment. Second is general deterrence, seek to understand how individual punishment can deter others from committing crimes. The third is marginal deterrence, seek to reconcile how effective different types of punishment are as either specific or general deterrence. So the fourth is partial deterrence, refers to a situation in which threat of penalty has some deterrence value even when someone engaged in illegal behavior. So rehabilitation, a common prison policy in America up until 1970s. Rehabilitation focuses on helping criminals and prisoners overcome the barriers that lead them to committing crimes act. So this include development occupational skills as well as resolving psychological issues such as drug addiction and aggression. So some of the example of rehabilitation includes exercise to improve a person's speech language and communicating after a brain injury, modifying an old prison home environment to prevent their safety and independence at home and reduce the risk of falls. Restoration, a radically different approach to criminal punishment. The goal of restoration is for the offenders to make direct amends to both the victim and the community in which the crime was committed. Although the relatively new practice in modern time, the concept of restorative justice can be found in the early legal system of Western Europe. So, an example of restoration is fixing an old lady's house to its original states. Another example is restoration is giving someone their job back. An example of rebuilding a set of bones and represent a dynasty. Let's go to the Age of Enlightenment. So, personality behind correctional institution. Cesar Bonicia. Personalities behind correctional institution. Cesar Beccaria, Marquis of Beccaria Benicia, Cesar Lombroso, William the Conqueror, Eric Ferry, Clifford Shaw. Cesar Beccaria. So, Cesar Beccaria was an Italian criminologist, Jewish philosopher, economic and political, who is widely considered as one of the greatest thinkers of Age of Enlightenment. So he was reserved and somewhat taciturn in his social contracts but placed great value in his personalities and family relationship. At the age of 8, he was sent to Jesuit school in Parma. Beccaria's late described the education he received there as fanatical and stifling to the development of human feelings. Although he revealed a mathematical aptitude, little in his studies days gave indication of remarkable intellectual achievement that was soon to follow. In 1758, he received a degree in law from the University of Pavia. So in 1760, Beccaria proposed marriage to the 16-year-old Teresa Blanco, encountered the obstacle opposite of his father. The following year, the marriage took place without parents' consent, and the young couple began their life together in poverty. So the breach between the father and the son was ultimately repaired, and Beccaria and his wife were received into the family's home. In 1763, a daughter, the first of the 3 children, was born. So this is Cesar Beccaria. Marquis of Beccaria Benicia. Beccaria sought in all cases to minimize or abolish the use of violations and the infliction of pain. He argued against the use of torture in the gathering of evidence, highlighting its absurdity, and against the death penalty, praising its failure to detect. The cross of the worker was granted the individual citizens against arbitrary delay, secrecy, and useless of expensive violations in the conviction of the law and the application of penal sanction. Cesar Lombroso described as the father of modern criminology. Cesare Lombroso theory of the born criminal demoted thinking about criminal behaviors in the late 19th and the early 20th century. So, Cesare Lombroso, November 6, 1853 to October 1909, was the founder of the Italian school of positive criminologies. He rejected the established of classical school, which held that criminal was characterized trait of human nature, and that reason choice were the found of behavior. Lombroso, using a scientific approach and concept, drew from psychonomy, early urgent as psychiatric and social Darwinism, argued that criminology was inherited and criminality was inherited and that born criminal. So Cesar Lombroso was say that if your father is a criminal, then you will born as a criminal too. So Cesar Lombroso, while his particular identifying characteristics are no longer considered valid, the idea of factors that predispose certain individuals to commit crime continues to foundational to work in criminology. Together with his emphasis on scientific method, the revolutionary approach has earned Lombroso the title Father of Scientific Criminology. So this is Cesar Lombroso. So William the Conqueror, William I, usually called as William the Conqueror and sometimes William the Bastard, the first Norman king of England. So before he became the king of England, William I was one of the mightiest nobles in France as the Duke of Normandy. But he is the best remembered for leading the Norman conquest of England in 1066, which changed the course England history and earned him as sobriquet William the Conqueror. He is one of the greatest soldier and rule of the Middle Age. He made himself the mightiest noble in France, and changed the course of England history in his concept of the country. So let's go to Enrico Ferri. Ferri was born in Lombardy in 1856 and worked first as a lecturer and late as professor of criminal law, having spent time as a student of Cesar Lombroso. While Lombroso researched anthropology, criminology, Ferris focuses more on social and economical influences on the criminal and crime rates. Ferris' research led to him postulating theories called for crime prevention methods to be the mainstays of law enforcement as opposite of punishment of criminals. After their crimes has taken place, he became a founder of the positive school, and he researched psychological and social positivism of opposite to the biology positivism of Lombroso. Ferri, at the time of radical, was elected to Italian parliament in 1886. In 1893, he joined the Italian social party list, and edited their daily newspaper at Avante. So Ferri favored Italian neutrality during World War II, and he was reelected as Socialist Party List deputy in 1921. In post-war Italy, he became a supporter of Mussolini fascist regime. Ferri died in 1929. So this is Enrico Ferri. So Clifford Shaw, or Clifford Robe Shaw, was an American sociologist and criminologist. He was a major figure in Chicago School of Sociology during the 1930s and the 1940s, and it's considered to be the one of the most influential figures in American criminology. His work on juvenile delinquency with Henry D. McKay, constructed in the late 1920s, played a pivotal role in motive the study of such delinquency towards the disciplinary discipline of sociology and away from psychologically and psychiatry. Clifford Shaw, the two studies published the Shaw and McKay in 1930s and 1940s were still held in high regarding among social scientists in 1970s. So this is Clifford Shaw. So 8 oldest prison in America. So New Jersey State Prison, Auburn Correctional Facility, Sing Sing Correctional Facility, Eastern State Penitentiary, Missouri State Penitentiary, San Quentin State Prison, Jewel Correctional Center, West Virginia State Penitentiary. So 8 oldest prison in America. Over the past several decades, the United States has become infamous for its large and notorious prison system. So in fact, America is the biggest jailer in the world, with 25% of the world total inmates. The history of prison is closely linked with the history of the United States. Before the 18th century, prisoners as well known them today did not exist in Europe or American colonies. So let's start with New Jersey prison. So while the New Jersey State Prison was not the first prison in the United States, it is the only one still around from 18th century, making it the oldest prison in America. New Bern Correctional Facilities. This is the second oldest prison in the United States. So was opened in 1870s and has continues to operate out of the same spot since then. So the Newborn prison is considered one of the earliest prisons of the American penal system. So Newborn Correctional Facility, famously Newborn Correctional Facility developed what is known as the Newborn system, which was implemented in other prisoners around the world. The system was effective. The Newborn Correctional Facilities allowed prisoners, officials from around the world, and the public as well tour the prison. Sing Sing Prison, or Sing Sing Correctional Facility, commonly known as Sing Sing, it is not only one of the oldest prisons in America, but one of the most infamous in the country, constructions of Sing Sing began in 1825, and prison's labor was used until the prison was complete in 1828. So, Eastern State Penitentiary. Another one of America's most notorious and oldest prison is the now defected Eastern State Penitentiary. Was opened its doors on October 25, 1829. Eastern State Penitentiary was created to be the world's first true penitentiary, and the design of the prison was heavily influenced by the ideas put forth by Philadelphia Society for Averting the Miseries of Public Prisoners in late 18th century. So, Missouri State Penitentiary. Before closing in 2004, Missouri State Penitentiary was the oldest prison in west of Mississippi River. Constructions of the prison begins in 1834 and in 1836. The first inmates, his Wilson Edison, was admitted to the newly opened Missouri State Penitentiary. Unlike most of the other earliest prisons in the list, Missouri State Penitentiary was used to house female prisoners because there were no federal facilities for women at that time. So they decided that Missouri State Penitentiary will be the female prisoners who committed a crime. San Quentin State Prison, usually just called San Quentin, has earned a reputation for being one of the worst prisons in America. So the prison is home to the largest death row in the country, and by the law, all Californian executions, both male and female, must take place at San Quentin. Joliet Correctional Center was an historical Gothic-style prison that served as inspirational of West Virginia State Penitentiary. Joliet Correctional Center was built in 1858 to replace Elysian First Prison. The facilities at Joliet Correctional Center were notorious, outdated, and running water and in-cell toilet were not insulated in 1910s. West Virginia State Prison. So, West Virginia State Penitentiary was the first prison built in the States at his present attractive global interest, and as the Gothic style's build was featured in the trailer for the anticipated Fallout 76 video game since closing in 1995. West Virginia State Penitentiary has been a popular tourist attraction due to report of ghost sighting. Programs and services. Alcohol and substances abuse treatment program. So alcohol substances abuse isn't uncommon, yet shame and embarrassment often keep people who are struggling in the shadows. All of us struggling in some ways and another throughout our lives. Some of us turn to alcohol or drug to mask traumas, pains, and escape. So some other people, if there have problems, they will keep drinking and drinking so that they will get drunk and forget what's the problem. Anger management program. So there are various treatments available that can help you with the anger problems. So, taking therapy and counseling, anger management program help us observe and violence behavior. If your difficulties with angers and related to mental health problems and nor traumatic experience, then you might find the treatment and support for these also address to your anger. Educational vocational program. So vocational educational is education that prepares people to work as technicians or to take up employments in a skills craft or trade as transperson or artist. A vocational education is known as a various of name depending on the countries considered, including careers and technical education. Family Development Program. The Family Development Program promotes the importance of building a strong foundation for each learning that begins honoring each family's home culturing and first language. We recognize the struggles every child and their families bring to education success. So guidance counseling services. The main major in guidance counseling services is to encourage students' academic, social, emotional, and personal development. To reach this aim, guidance counseling services help students to get know themselves better and effective solutions to their daily problems. They also help students improve themselves in all areas and be full functions individuals. Counselors monitor students' development and according to their needs they give students necessary support such as helping them to understand themselves and their needs to solve their problems to make realistic decisions to improve their abilities and skill and adjust themselves and their environments in a healthy way. So law library services. The library law circulations policy and produced a design to ensure that on-site research have access to the legal resource they needed. As a result, many libraries resource do not circulate outside the building. Recreational program. Recreational program provides opportunity to our children to participate in an organized sports events, art classic social program such as cadets club, chess, and social activities such as swimming, hiking, skating, or tabujing, etc., and many other programs. Religious services. Create a programs for worship, community services, or event which symbolize temple. We think it might statement as it is, but it is made to our own by easily changing that font's color and more. Sex offender treatments. So sex offender treatments program is comprehensive programs of counseling and treatments offender by the Department of Correctionals Community Supervision of convicted sex offenders and other incarcerated individuals. The department identified as likely to benefit from sex offender counseling and treatment based upon a study of their backgrounds. So temporary release program refers to program which allowed release of prisoners from the place of his or her imprisonment for limited period. So for example of this is my one of the prisoners wanted to visit his family. So the the guards there will guide the prisoners to their home for just like 2 hours, or how many hours they will give to the prisoners. So trauma program. The effect of trauma lasts longer than a month and causes disruptions in your normal ways and functioning. You may have PTSD. So the globe standards for treatment symptoms is psychiatrist, particular cognitive behavior therapy, cognitive process therapy, and long exposure therapy. So transitional services program. The transitional services program is the three process program designed to assist in preparing individuals from returning to their communities. Additional activities has been developed to assist as transition within the correctional system. So veteran services. So veteran services may be classified as disabled veteran, recently separated veteran, active duty, wartime of campaign badges veteran, and armed forces services medal veteran. So voluntary services and program. Voluntary program Voluntary program for government services is a platform for private sectors volunteering in government agency and local government units by virtue of Republic Act 9418 of the Volunteer Act of 2017. So that's all the lessons for this month. Thank you.